know the term buyer beware. Well, if you're thinking of purchasing a Florida piece of property, there are three things that you need to be aware of, and I'll cover those three things before you're considering buying an investment property or owning in the state of Florida. We all know it always comes down to the money, right? And all of these three things that you need to know boils down to money. Number one, HOA and rental restrictions. Number two, taxes and how do they work in the state of Florida. And number three, insurance, the big ugly insurance topic. So, number one, rental restrictions. There is a lot of bad information out there, and actually a lot of agents put their information out incorrectly and they don't double check. And what I mean by that is most properties that are in Sarasota County, for example, they just fall under the Sarasota County ordinance that states if it's a single family home, for example, in just a large neighborhood like Southgate, Gulfgate, some of these very old and established neighborhoods, the ordinance is, per county rules, that you can only rent one time per month for up to 12 times per year. So that means you can have 12 leases. Each lease has to be a minimum of 30 days. So you can have 12 different renters per year. Now, people go and color in and outside of the lines all the time, but as agents, it is our responsibility to put forth true and accurate information. And I think it's frustrating to me as an agent because I know the neighborhood so well and I know when there's inaccuracies. But there are times when I'm not 100% sure, and it'd be nice if the agent who takes the listing cross-references, calls the county, looks it up, goes to whatever lengths they need to go to ensure that they are putting out accurate information. And unless you're in the city limits of Sarasota, downtown Sarasota, and the perimeter, it's like 34236 zip code for the most part, or you're on Anna Maria Island, or you're in the village of Siesta Key. These are quirks, okay, of property areas that go outside the lines, coloring outside the lines. There are HOAs, like certain condo communities, that allow and are grandfathered in to rent a lot more frequently. There are condos on like Longboat Key. Some require 3-month minimum. Some require you to own 1 or 2 years before you even rent. These are major points of contention and major selling points for people for different reasons. Some people don't want to live in a churn and burn rental community. They want to get to know their neighbors. They want to know that the place is like secure and not having like this high turnover. I totally get that. For others, they just want that ROI. They want that churn and burn rental type property. And it's just different strokes for different folks. But the amount of inaccuracies out there, I cannot even express to you how frustrating and annoying that is. When I know full and well, when an agent puts no minimum, meaning there's no minimum rental restriction, so you can rent that nightly, I know that's totally inaccurate and they're just lazy and they're not putting in the information correctly. Now, there are companies that you can hire that are like flat rate companies that just plug and paste. I don't know what they do, but I check every single line myself as your agent to ensure that I have double, triple cross-referenced information. And if you want me to get into general like ROIs in different areas, you're welcome to call, text, email me anytime for your property that maybe you're thinking about acquiring or selling or whatever. But yeah, it's really crazy how much inaccurate information is out there. And sometimes I call people out and sometimes I for the most part, I don't, unless I have a client looking at the property. Number 2, property taxes. Okay, so there's a couple things to go over here with this. So one thing is your homestead, another is not your homestead. It's just either is or it isn't. So under your homestead, you have to live in that property for 6 months and a day. And your driver's license has to reflect your homestead. So they're going to ask you when you go to the tax collector's office to change your driver's license, change your residency, and showcase that you in fact live here. So because in the past there was some fraud, and of course there's always going to be fraud no matter what. People trying to skate through and say this is my homestead, and it's really not. So the benefits, and of course, these might be changing, but as of this moment as I'm filming, August 2026, it's a major incentive to have a homestead property in Florida. So you file your exemption and you get $50,000 off the total taxable value if you live there as your full-time residence. Number one. And number two benefit is the property taxes cannot go up more than 3% per year. So if a property owner has owned for 10, 20 years, your tax base is based on when you purchased, right? So if you purchased 10 years ago for $200,000, your incremental increases are just very slight, up to no more than 3% per year. And there's what's called portability, so that if you move to another property, that calculation gets ported to the next property. Now, when you're purchasing property in Florida as well, whether you're homestead or not homestead, second home investment, all those other categories are not homestead. Your taxes are based on the current year's taxes for that property owner, right? But let's say they bought their house for $200,000 10 years ago. Your purchase is going to be based on today's price. So, and this is not an exact calculation, but when I express to clients, it's between 1.3 to 1.4% of the purchase price for your annual taxes. Okay, and that's now your new tax base. Now, with non-homesteaded owners, your taxes could not go up more than 10% per year. With the upcoming proposed changes in Florida, which would be so exciting, you have to buy or own a property here by the end of 2026 to start the clock. So if you already own or you're going to be owning by the end of 2026, if the new laws take place and change, there's going to be some massive incentives for that. And I've talked at length about that exactly in other videos, but we're not going to get into too much detail in this video because, it's to be determined. But we have touched on that in some of the last few videos that I did with Mark, my broker. So yeah, it's exciting because, especially if you own your home outright, it's like, okay, I've paid my dues and I don't mind paying some taxes. It probably won't go down to zero, but it's an incentive to own in Florida. And I think it's a beautiful thing. The last issue or item that you should be aware of if you're buying in Florida is, of course, insurance. And it's just gone up and up and up and up. I think there's been like a slight decrease in some of these properties because we haven't had any storms last year. And so far as of 2026, we're not even quite halfway through the hurricane season, because hurricane season here in Florida is June through November and it's August. So I guess time will tell. But when we have less storms, the risk reward ratio for the insurance companies, the risk goes down. Therefore, the premiums hypothetically should go down. So we'll see. But, and there are people that self-insure too. Everybody's got a different stance on that. And I think at a bare minimum, people should have liability insurance because it just takes one person to trip on your floor or, that's just kind of my personal take on that. The second item as it relates to insurance is I don't always think that the lowest premium is the best. And you want to ask your insurance agent or ask me for my contacts, ask them, does this company have a long-standing history of actually paying claims? Do they pay out? Are they solvent? Like, are they A-rated? I don't know if there's A, B rating in insurance companies. I'm sure there are, but I mean, understand when you're comparing insurance quotes that you're getting apples to apples, just like when you're hiring a realtor. I hate when say it's realtor, 2 syllables. Anyway, I don't think it's always the best to have the lowest premium. It's like auto insurance. To me, I have like the high rate because it just takes one little turn of the wheel and next thing you know, all these expenses go up. And so I don't always want that either. I'd rather feel like I have peace of mind, And I mean, as it relates to insurance too, like even properties that are in zone X, I over the years started recommending that people just get flood insurance because levees break, things happen. I don't know. And if you're in zone X, which is non-flood zone, it's nominal for being able to sleep at night and not having some random act, maybe act of God, maybe act of human, I don't know. They call it force majeure in the real estate contracts, that something happens and your house floods. And think about it. It's floors, it's baseboards, it's all the furniture that sits down, the rugs, like cabinetry. These things are, appliances, like, and all the electrical components behind that. So, and it's, all the drywall. So it's just like, that adds up really quickly. And then you add the square footage and on and on. And so drapes, but it's always about the bottom dollar, no matter your budget, So these are really important things that you want to know in advance. I mean, people always ask taxes, HOA, rental restrictions, insurance, and then everything else is like, do I love the neighborhood? And then there's also CDD fees too in some communities, the large master plan communities like Lakewood Ranch. So if you have any questions, you see a really beautiful property online and you're like, oh, okay, how much would it take for me to put down or pay for or rent or insure? I got you. I got all these great contacts, So, and I have a little Airbnb that I manage, and I know kind of like, and I'm also very conservative in the way that I underwrite properties and explain things to people. So I'm not just, painting this big rosy picture that it's always going to be this way or the cost will stay the same. Like, if anything, I always tell people costs just go up so that you're prepared and not underprepared. So anyway, I hope that's helpful. If you have any questions about purchasing or selling real estate in the state of Florida, I sell from Manatee, Sarasota, and Charlotte counties. That's a large area. It's all the islands, all that mainland area, Lakewood Ranch, everything in between. So you call me 941-544-7690.